I think a lot of drivers in Colorado are high behind the wheel. A whole lot. More than we can count, frankly. And you get some people go, oh, I drive better high. I really bet you don't. You probably think you drive better when you're high because you're high, right? So there's that to consider, obviously. But people, when I'm driving through Colorado Springs, when I'm driving through Denver, when I'm on I-25, people are lazy. They're moving around without signaling. They're merging over at their own pace. They're not paying attention. They're occasionally rear-ending people for no good reason in perfectly adequate weather. And that should not be happening, frankly.
From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
And here we are, rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show. I'm your host, Matt West, hanging out with you on the weekend, talking cars on the radio all across southern Colorado, and perhaps on video if you're joining us online, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Now, we've got a loaded show today. Going to talk a little bit about Hertz rental cars, and you'll see why that's important here in just a minute. We're also going to discuss some interesting revelations I've had driving a somewhat electric Jeep Wrangler. Yes, a hybrid. I know. I've driven EVs before. I've driven full EVs before. But I'm going to give you my impression behind the wheel of something that's a little out of my wheelhouse. So, now if you're joining on video, you're going to notice the garage studio is different. It's very different because I am not in the studio. I'm actually talking to you, and technology is amazing right now. I am doing a radio show in southern Colorado through the internet right now from a highway in Maryland. Yeah, I'm in Maryland right now, cruising on the highway, not quite doing 65 miles an hour, I'll add. We're doing 38 miles an hour behind a semi-truck right now. But technology is truly amazing. I mean, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would not have been possible to do this. So this is really neat. And hopefully the signal lasts long enough for this endeavor to hold out. And I will tell you why in a little bit. I'm on the road. And yes, I mean, they say don't text and drive. Has anyone ever said, don't do I gotta pass this truck, don't do a talk radio show while you're driving? I don't know. Talk radio, it's meant to be listened to in the car. I don't know if it's meant to be created in the car. I can't really, I can't state whether it is or not. So we're going to find out, and hopefully I don't get myself a ticket here on this road. But before we get to any of that, I saw this recently, a statistic, and I really want to talk about it because Miata drivers have become a problem. And you say, how can Miata drivers be a problem? Well, by not driving their cars. You see, Miatas are meant to be driven. And according to a recent study, and I have to look down off of the road here just very briefly to actually see the stats here, because I have them written down. It's different doing a radio show from behind the wheel of a car. This is a car show, though, so I mean, come on, this is par for the course right here. We can talk cars in a car while driving a car. We can do it all. And anyway, Miata drivers, average miles driven per year. What do you think that is for a Miata driver, right? So we know Porsche guys don't drive their cars much. We know that, well, really anyone with a sports car doesn't actually drive the car, which is a shame. That is such a shame. No, I don't want to put miles on it. Oh, I'm scared if I drive it. I don't know. People will look at it and it'll lose value. Miata drivers, though, before I give you this answer here, there are some other stats for how many miles driven other people drive. So we'll go through these right here. And you know what I will do, at the risk of getting the attention of a state trooper or something, I'm going to put my notes right up here. I feel like that's a bit safer than looking down at them. But the Chrysler Pacifica, it's a minivan, that is driven on average 20,000 miles, 20,822 miles per year. The Chevy Malibu, for context, that is driven 18,700 miles a year. The Ford Expedition, 17,000 miles per year. And these stats, by the way, come by way of Motor One, hat tip Motor One for this article here. So, and I would say the average miles driven for a car, it's about 10 to 12,000 miles a year. The average person does that. And that's going to vary, obviously. That's going to be your average. Isn't it coincidental how automotive leases tend to be a little bit lower than that? They always tend to be a little lower than the mileage. That's by design, by the way. But let's get to the point here with Miatas. Because Miatas, we love Miatas. Every car guy ever loves a good Miata, right? It is a bread and butter sports car. It is the quintessential enjoyment machine. It is a lot of fun to drive a Miata. And yeah, they're not that powerful, but I mean, when people talk about Miatas, they always wax poetic about, well, it's better to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. It's a momentum car. It's slow car fast, right? You've probably heard all of those things from a Miata owner at one point. And frankly, they're right. They are 100% correct, in my opinion. And being that how it is, there's a problem with that. Miata owners love to remind you how fun and cute their car is and how they're having more fun at the autocross with 5 horsepower than you are with 500, right? They will extol the virtues of their tiny sports car, their little baby sports car. And you know what? Despite that, these guys are about to get buzzed by a motorcycle here. Woo, woo, there he goes. He's having more fun than I am right now. Miata owners drive their vehicles 5,073 miles per year on average. 5,000 miles per year. And I know what you're saying, Matt, you know, people don't buy Miatas to daily drive them. It's a second car. It's a third car. I don't care. You should be driving that Miata. Again, much like how I'm driving. I just turned the HVAC up all the way by my notes falling over. We're going to leave those down. You know, we're going to let those be. The one thing this Jeep does have, and I love it. We'll get to this and more. That's a physical climate knob right there that just got knocked by that falling off the dashboard. And I'm glad that physical climate knob was there to get knocked by that falling over. Anyway, Miata owners are driving 5,000 miles a year. And you know what that is? That's 0.4% of the average, basically. It's ridiculous that you would buy such a fun car to drive and never drive it. So I'm on a little bit of a tirade here because, you know, guys will say, all right, fine, you got a GT3 911. Okay, you should drive the wheels off of that. Absolutely. However, there is merit to the argument that, oh, well, it's a rare car and I don't want to put too many miles on it because, you know, depreciation is really a pain. And yeah, fine. I don't necessarily agree with that argument, but I'll understand that argument is valid. It is valid. And having said that, you know, there's so many expensive cars out there. And you know, the Miata is not one of them. If there is any car that you can buy new and just enjoy it and just keep it. Look, the car's, you know, even brand new. Okay, fine. I'll be honest. Miatas do get a little pricey. with some of the options. But I mean, even the priciest Miatas out there, right? They're not that expensive. You can get into a very fun car, and especially if you're buying a, Miata RF, the current generation Miata. Maybe you're buying it, 10,000 miles on it secondhand. You are getting a tremendous value. You're getting into that car way below $30,000, perhaps even in the low 20s. I've seen them with higher miles already in the high teens, right? And that's a lot of car, newer car. That's a lot of fun. So, I mean, you would have to understand that, look, that car is going to depreciate no matter what, but it doesn't have very far to go, and you can just drive it and have fun. We're going to continue this conversation. Oh, and we are also going to discuss this Jeep I'm driving, why I'm driving through Maryland, and doing a talk radio show. All of that and more coming up right here after the break on Automotive ADHD. Send your car sounds into my show, facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. I'm your host, Matt West, by the way, and I am joining you from the road right now. This is an unusual way to do a talk radio show. This is a very unusual way to do it. I'm behind the wheel of a 2025 Jeep Wrangler 4xe, a hybrid. And yes, through the magic of technology, I'm coming to you right now, as you hear this, from a highway in Maryland. Isn't technology amazing? I can't believe this is actually working. We live in the future, man. We live in the future. And it is also a future where I'm driving a hybrid Jeep Wrangler. I mean, what is going on with that? And there's a lot going on with a hybrid Jeep Wrangler. And I do want to get to some of those details, but I feel like discussing a few other things. We're going to discuss my impressions on this Jeep Wrangler. No, I'm not here on this trip just doing things to drive this Jeep. In fact, I didn't know I was going to be driving this Jeep until about 10 hours ago. So we're going to get to all of that. We're going to get to that. We might even get to more of your car sounds. And more, of course, on this edition of the Automotive ADHD show. And right now, I'm on a highway, like I said, Maryland at the moment. It is beautiful. It is green. It is lush. There are rolling hills and mountains in the distance. If you're watching on video, facebook.com/Automotive ADHD, YouTube, look up at Automotive ADHD show on YouTube. I know most folks either catch this on the radio or they catch the podcast of the radio show after the fact. And, but a lot of them aren't subscribed on video. And I reckon you should be, actually. I reckon you really should be. You're missing out. Because you're missing out on stuff like this. And if you are watching on video, I've now switched. I've got a video feed going. I didn't have it going in the first segment, but I now have it forward-facing video feed of the road ahead, and we'll cut between these shots here in the video. But this is gorgeous territory out here. Gorgeous territory. But I do have to complain a little bit about the drivers out here. It's a nice old Fox Mustang that just went by. Anyway, I do have to complain about the drivers because while I'm in Maryland right now, I've actually been spending the past week in our nation's capital. The swamp, sometimes as it's known as well, Washington, D.C. And I was doing some stuff for one of those pesky jobs that affords me the project cars that don't run yet. And I've loosely talked about this on the show before, but I own a video production company, and we do a lot of videos on the road with various politicians, and we do podcasts. That's getting really big now, especially on a high level. Don't think of my shows as a high level. Like, you talk about a mechanic, right? And how he treats his own car versus customer cars. But anyway, we do some high level stuff, and we've done a number of podcasts out in DC. We've done stuff with Vice President Mike Pence. We've had various members of Congress on, and I do this for a variety of people. But I was spending some time here, And very rarely do I rent a car when I go to DC. I typically Uber around, and I find that DC is very good with Ubers. Your Uber driver isn't always going to speak English, but if they can follow the map, you're generally going to get there, and you're going to get there in one piece. I had one Uber driver a couple months back from Pakistan, and I thought he was trying to kill us both. I really don't know what he was doing, but having said that, he did get me to my destination in record time. I mean, this guy was a madman, though. A clinical madman. And I mean, granted, you know, cab drivers, Uber drivers, you never know what you're going to get. But, you know, nobody looks at drivers in any particular city and says, yeah, we've got the best drivers around. You know that? We really do. And if you ask anybody, and you ask them, you know, what do you think of the drivers in your city? You are going to get, oh, they're the worst in the world. They are terrible. Absolutely terrible. Everyone thinks wherever they live, the drivers are terrible. And you know what? That's probably true. That's probably true. Now, coming from Colorado, the drivers are especially terrible, I find. Even compared to places like Washington, D.C. The thing with the drivers in Washington, D.C. is they're very aggressive, much like any larger city. You go to New York City, you go to New Jersey, you go to these cities on the East Coast, and you find that the drivers are incredibly aggressive, but I'm okay with that. Because generally speaking, to be an aggressive driver, you need to be paying attention. You're not going to be lackadaisically browsing, you know, Twitter on your phone and driving aggressively. There's inattentive driving, there's defensive driving, and there is, I would call it offensive driving. And I would like to think generally I'm a defensive driver. However, people who ride passenger with me would probably say the opposite. No, dude, you're an offensive driver. Yes, I can be very offensive as I drive. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that is. And people will say, no, you shouldn't be rude on the roads. It's not that I'm being rude per se. But if there is a gap and someone's not letting me in, I'm going to use the horsepower I have and make that gap disappear and do what I need, right? And I'm going to be aware of my surroundings. And that's something we don't have back in Colorado. The drivers there are not aggressive. They are inattentive on a much larger scale than I find in these East Coast cities. And I don't know why that is. Perhaps it is because of the choice of recreational medicines that perhaps Colorado is known for. And that very well could be it, because you drive in Colorado, and for my listeners on the podcast tuning in who do not live in Colorado, but you drive in Colorado and you pull up to a stoplight and you roll your window down. And there's probably I wouldn't say every time it's going to happen, but frequently you are going to smell that smell of, I'll say it, marijuana. You're going to smell that. And it's not coming from any buildings. It's not coming from anybody on the street, or on the sidewalk, I should say. It's coming from someone in traffic with you. And I think that's a big problem. I think that is a major issue, a major flaw. Now, culturally, have Colorado drivers been this bad in the past? I would say there's a good argument that the answer there is yes, and even predating the legalization of marijuana. But I really do think that there's a challenge with that, right? If you're in a state that has legalized marijuana, how are you ensuring that people aren't driving high? How are you ensuring that? Because it's a lot harder if someone, you could say, oh, well, you'll smell the pot, right? Well, no, because there's a lot of other ways to consume marijuana. And I think that there's a lot of ways that are also obviously undetectable. Someone who has, let's say, marijuana gummies, they're going to drive like they're high because they're high. And there's no other indication that they're high. You don't have the smell, you don't have the smoke. That makes it very challenging. And this is important. I think it's an important topic to understand and look at as more states are pursuing legalization in various ways. It's important to understand this topic and to see, what do we do as drivers? What does that mean for those of us on the roads. And whether you are supporting legalization or not, we're not going to argue today on the program, should it be legal, should it not be legal? What we're talking about is, well, I live in a state where it's legal. What do we do now? How do we treat that on the roads? And I think we don't have a good solution there because, frankly, I think a lot of drivers in Colorado are high behind the wheel. A whole lot. More than we can count, frankly. And you get some people go, oh, I drive better high. I really bet you don't. You probably think you drive better when you're high because you're high, right? So there's that to consider, obviously. But people, when I'm driving through Colorado Springs, when I'm driving through Denver, when I'm on I-25, people are lazy. They're moving around without signaling. They're merging over at their own pace. They're not paying attention. They're occasionally rear-ending people for no good reason in perfectly adequate weather. And that should not be happening, frankly. Now, yeah, I'm not saying all of it's marijuana related. Yeah, sure, some of it's texting related. That's a big thing. Maybe some of those people are doing talk radio shows while driving. That's also possible. I'm skeptical of that, but that's certainly possible. Though so far, I'm proving that this idea, how crazy it is, does work. And again, for our video viewers, if you tune into the feed, man, isn't this pretty out here? This is very pretty out here. Coming from the high mountains of Colorado, yeah, we got these big snow-capped mountains, beautiful mountain roads. This is pretty in a different way, and that's always very nice. And I've been to many, many states. I've traveled a lot for work, pleasure, all sorts of stuff, and I do enjoy the change of scenery. But again, I also enjoy not seeing people driving stoned all the time. And that it's evident. And maybe it's the marijuana, maybe it's the culture. A little bit of it's the culture. People here on the East Coast, they can be a little more in your face. They're not polite in the way that Midwest people are. And our personalities very much reflect the way we drive. And a great example of this, and we got to go to break here in just a second, but a fantastic example of this is that people drive the way they walk around in a grocery store. Have you noticed that? You go to a Costco, right? Go to a Sam's Club, and you will find that people are meandering around. They're slowly turning. They're hanging out in the left side, not letting anybody pass. And guess what? They drive the same way too. Anyway, we got to go to break. You're listening to the Automotive ADHD show. We're going to be right back after this.
He's the nut behind the wheel and behind the mic. This is Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
Behind the wheel right now, a special edition show as I'm cruising through Maryland. Hopefully I will not be in Maryland for much longer. I haven't told you why I'm doing this yet, but in the last segment, by the way, we were discussing just some observations I've made about people's behavior, about traffic, about comparing people's driving behavior out here on the East Coast to people at home in Colorado, where marijuana is legal, where people are inattentive as drivers. And again, I didn't say that everyone is stone driving. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pinning that one thing on all of our problems. I mean, part of it is just people don't know how to drive. Our education system for driving is completely broken. And it needs some major reform, the way we educate drivers. And by reform, I mean reform in the sense of curriculum. I mean, they're just not even teaching a curriculum in a way that yields skilled drivers. It's too easy to get a driver's license in many cases. And Europe has figured this out. Now, I'm not pushing for more government, more control on this, but we're already in a system that's governmentally regulated when it comes to drivers, right? The state is issuing you a driver's license that says you are competent enough to operate this machine on these roads that are funded by taxpayers. And I think they're handing them out far too easily. And if I weren't doing the show behind the wheel of a car right now, I could pull up some stats for you and tell you why, at least some numbers behind that. And there are numbers behind it. But I think we need to see some major reform there. and again, tying this into my East Coast adventures right now, people here, they're bad in different ways. Sure, they're aggressive. They're trying to sneak in. They're trying to, and by sneak in, sneak into spots between you and another driver. Like, for example, following distance out here does not exist. I mean, following distance is your bumper. Are you touching the bumper? Okay, good. That's good following distance, right? That's how people treat it out here. And that's not safe either, and so there's other issues. But I would in a way prefer people that are more aggressive on the roads like they are here than people who are half asleep or stoned at the wheel like they are back home. And, it does put it into perspective. If you drive a lot, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe if you're a long-haul trucker, you've probably seen it. You've seen it all. You know all of the driving habits all across the country. How does it differ from one place to another? But, let me know what you think. Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. You can comment on the YouTube video and on Spotify now. They do comments on there. So, now you're probably wondering at this point in the show, we're halfway through the program, and you're probably wondering, well, Matt, why are you driving a car right now while doing a radio show and beaming it back to Colorado? And it's an interesting story because I wasn't planning to be here. Like I said, I was out here for some work, and my airline was supposed to leave on Thursday. If you're unaware, this show happens on Saturdays. At least the original airing. We air a few more times over the weekend on some different stations. This show originally airs at 9 a.m. on Saturday, okay? And I was supposed to be back in Colorado on Thursday afternoon, and there were some tremendous downpours. I mean, massive downpours that were happening all across the East Coast. And I mean, this was like apocalyptic level rain, and it shut down air travel all across the East Coast. I mean, and it was making national headlines, and airports were completely shutting down. Flights were getting diverted to other ones, which then were also getting shut down. I was trying to fly out of Reagan International Airport, and my flight got delayed. Gets delayed an hour. All right, no problem. Okay. Gets delayed another hour. All right, no problem. And then another, and then another, and then another, until it got to the point where my flight was 10 hours delayed. And after the 10-hour mark, and it probably, frankly, was a little more than that, they finally go, oh, yeah, we're going to cancel the flight. And everyone was piled up at the gate. And I have to commend the pilots for making the call on this. So the pilots came from another location with the plane that I was going to be flying out on. And they came into the gate. Everyone had already waited 10 hours, and they said, folks, you're not going to like this. We've already been flying near our maximums that we can do legally, and we're exhausted, and we don't have a relief crew to fill in. And so, people lost their minds. The mob mentality. You got 150 people stacked up at this gate who've been clawing at each other's throats for 10 hours already. And they were very unhappy. And because I'm out on the East Coast, they let you know, they let the pilots know they were unhappy. And I think that was really rude, in fact. I think that was very rude. And not in a good way, right? In a weird way, like, okay, you can kind of be rude on the East Coast, and it's like, you can be rude while being nice to somebody, and that works out here for some reason. But this wasn't good. And the pilots, these guys had been flying all day. They've been dealing with crazy things, and people don't understand necessarily what pilots have to do. They don't understand the back end. And not saying that I'm a pilot, but I am a casual observer and enthusiast of the aviation industry. It's adjacent to cars. It's mechanical. It's cool. It's nerdy. It's fun. And those pilots are doing so much. They're, making all these plans, diverting to other airports, changing up stuff. They got so many things going on in the back burner. Those are the guys you don't want to be exhausted. If they've had a long day, a very long day, and they say, look, folks, we are too tired and there's no relief crew coming in because all these other flights are having problems. We can't find another crew. We got to call it. It's a safety decision. And that was the right call to make. And as they walked by, I shook the captain's hand. Everyone else was yelling at him, and I said, sir, thank you for what you do. I know you guys have had a long day. I think you made the right call. And he was probably not used to hearing that on this side of the country. But all of that transpired, and it eventually transpired in me saying, okay, when can I get other flights? When is it going to happen? And I kid you not, at this point, I mean, it's still total air gridlock, if you will. It is gridlock in the skies on the East Coast. And I said, I'm just going to rent a car. I could kick around in an airport for another 24 hours, or I could spend that 24 hours driving from Washington, D.C. back to Colorado. And it gives me some really cool opportunities to see some beautiful countryside I don't get to see. And it gives me an opportunity to tell you about this Jeep Wrangler that I'm driving. This is a four-door. It's a 2025. And they gave me a hybrid Jeep Wrangler. And funny enough, it actually cost less than my airplane ticket. So go figure. And I'm having more fun than if I was flying. But this Jeep Wrangler's interesting in that it is a hybrid. You may be familiar with these. You may have seen them around. They've been out for a few years, but I haven't had a chance to get hands-on with one behind the wheel. And it is a hybrid, meaning it's got electric drive and gas drive. Now, this is different than how Edison does their diesel-electric hybrid, where it's electric drive to the wheels, and then you basically have a generator on board. This still has a traditional drivetrain. You've got an engine, you've got a transmission, you've got a front and rear differential, and you got a motor basically between that engine and that transmission. And it's going to provide a little bit of a boost. And it's an unusual experience to have this in a Jeep Wrangler, I'm finding, because I've driven some other hybrids. The new 2025 Corolla hybrid, one of my buddies has one. I got to get behind the wheel of that. That's very, I will say, Toyota does a smoother hybrid than Jeep does in terms of the transition to the electric drivetrain and all of that stuff. It's a lot smoother and a little more responsive. But then again, Toyota's been doing the hybrid game for a long time, with the Prius dating back actually to the late 90s in Japan. So I want to give you my impressions on this. Oh, and I mentioned at the top of the show, Hertz rental car. We got to talk about them. I was bashing on them on the show last week, and you're not going to believe who the company is who rented me this vehicle. Actually, you might. We're going to talk about that after the break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Automotive ADHD show, and it's right here.
Hey, guess who gets 21 miles per gallon? Surprised? A lot of folks are. But the 1980 Jeep CJ with a feisty four-cylinder engine gets the best gas mileage of any four-wheel drive vehicle built in America. An EPA estimated MPG of 21 and a highway estimate of 25.
Plus, right now, your AMC Jeep dealer has a soft top special listing for only $99. That's right, only $99. Take advantage of this great value now.
This is Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
So this Jeep Wrangler that I'm driving right now, as I'm doing a radio show from Maryland, that's airing all across southern Colorado. It's been a complicated show. Complicated week for me as well. If you were just tuned in before the break, you'll know why I'm doing this. Wasn't my plan at all. My flight got delayed, then canceled, and then I said, you know what? It'll just be easier if I drive back. And you know what? I was actually kind of looking forward to driving back a little bit. There was no other option really in this case. And I'm a car guy. I like driving. I love road trips. Road trips, if you're going to travel somewhere, traveling by road in some gorgeous parts of the country is such a great way to go. Yeah, it's slower. It's more fun, though. It's a lot more fun. And this 2025 Jeep Wrangler 4xe, it's a hybrid. I was just telling you about it. It's a four-door. It's red. Matches my cars at home, which is nice. The hybrid system here is interesting because you don't typically think of a Jeep as a hybrid. Now, this is a plug-in hybrid. So I actually stopped at a Love's travel stop, got some fuel, got some snacks, but I plugged it into an EV charger, which is weird. It almost felt dirty plugging something into an EV charger. I mean, you know, I'm the car guy on this talk radio show, and I love, you know, track cars, gas-powered cars. I love anything with an engine. It almost felt dirty to it felt like I was being a hypocrite plugging this thing in, but I think it's fair to experience this, and I will say I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit. It's different, it's fun, it's not fast, it's not fast at all. In fact, this has got a 4-cylinder engine with the hybrid motor. And I will say with that right now, I'm averaging like 21 miles per gallon, which is actually pretty good when you consider the fact that this is a cardboard box basically that I'm shoving through the air at 60 miles an hour right now. Jeeps are not known for their aerodynamics. I think at one point it was a meme on the internet. I don't know if it was true, but it felt like it was true, and that's what counts. Which it had a picture of a computer-generated wind tunnel test, a computerized wind tunnel simulation. And somebody simulated the aerodynamics of a Jeep Wrangler and then compared it to the aerodynamics of a cow. And the cow was actually more aerodynamic. Again, I don't know how much of that was meme and how much was fact, but I'd like to believe that that's true. And so for this, I'm doing okay. Now, when I got this car from Hertz Rental Car, who I was just bashing on last week on the show, when I picked it up, it had a full tank of gas and a dead battery, or at least a dead hybrid battery, which was unfortunate because I really wanted to see the benefit of this hybrid battery pack and see what it did for my fuel mileage. And frankly, I've mostly just been running on the gas engine. So I stopped. I got about 30% charge in at a Love's travel stop. Took about 30, 40 minutes there. The charging experience, though, was not very seamless. And if I was in a pure EV, I think this would be a problem, especially on this route. I haven't seen many EV chargers out here. There was only a level 2 charger. Not only that, the EV charger at this Love's travel stop was installed in 2016. This is a much older charger. It had a really dated interface on it. You had to download an app I've never heard of for it. And then you had to plug your credit card in the old-fashioned way. You had to do all this stuff. You come up to these newer EV chargers now, especially these level 3 chargers, and you just tap your credit card, tap your phone, plug it in, you're good to go. I really didn't like that. You can tell the charging infrastructure still is not necessarily complete or as intuitive as it is for gas. I can pull up to a gas pump, throw the credit card in, pumped gas, right? Go to the counter, give them 20 bucks. 20 bucks on pump number 2, go pump my gas, right? This, I had to make an app. I didn't have to make the app. I had to download the app, and then I had to make an account to download the app. Then I had to link the credit card to the account. 15 minutes later, I finally get this thing charging, and it's slow. It's level 2. Level 2 is not fast charging by a long shot, but it got me somewhere. And then it got me at least trying to drive this thing around on EV mode only, which I will actually switch back into it. I've been in some hilly terrain, so let's go to hybrid mode. I pushed a button, it's on the left side of the steering wheel, and it says hybrid mode automatically adapts for most efficient driving. And this will at some point, I'm going up a hill at this point, so it probably won't do it right now. But when I go downhill, it'll kick the engine off, which is a little unsettling. You feel the engine just quit, you watch the tachometer drop, and then you'll see the charge meter. Well, not the charge, there's a power usage meter where the speedometer normally goes. Tells you how much power you're using. You'll see that thing kick up. And it's interesting. Now, this does also have regenerative braking, which is unusual for a Jeep Wrangler. And I will say, compared to a full EV, I've driven Teslas, I've been in the F-150 Lightning, which I've driven that. I really love how it drives. It's a nice driving truck. The regenerative braking on the F-150 Lightning is aggressive. You lift off the gas pedal, don't touch the brakes at all if you're in one pedal drive mode, and it'll just throw you forward, right? Especially if you're decelling hard. It'll decel a lot harder than a gas car will. I'll put it that way, like a manual transmission gas car. This does it, and you'll feel that regenerative braking kick in. You'll watch the charge meter go up from using power to generating power. And it's not very smooth though. And then especially if the gas engine is running and then you lift off the brakes, or lift off the gas, it won't regeneratively brake until you press the brake pedal. But I know it's not the actual brakes because I can press the brake pedal just ever so slightly. I can breathe on it and the Jeep goes, oh, you want to slow down? let's engage that electric motor and slow you down with the regenerative braking. It's not very smooth. It kind of flutters back and forth. So I do wish that was smoother. But all things considered, with it being a hybrid Jeep, it drives really nice. These newer JL generation Jeep Wranglers really have come a long way. I have had a Jeep Wrangler YJ, which actually I still own. That's $800 stroker Jeep. And that's about as old school as you can get. I mean, okay, a CJ is a little more old school, but they're not that different, right? And it's funny because the YJ is supposed to be more refined than a CJ, and I'm not seeing it. But and then I've also had a Jeep JK Wrangler, which is the first not AMC produced or derived Jeep Wrangler, essentially. And those went from 2007 to, gosh, don't quote me on it, 2018, because 2018 is when they came out with these JLs. And these JLs are a lot more refined. It's very smooth on the road. I like that. You can cruise on the highway in this thing and have a decent conversation like I'm having with you right now over the radio, which is crazy. It's quiet, it's nice, the steering doesn't wander all over the place, it's actually pretty direct, and you know, it's a pleasant vehicle to drive. It has power locks, power mirrors, power windows, which since when did a Jeep have those? And it's really not bad. And I like it quite a bit, in fact. That hybrid system is interesting. Now, I don't know, because I haven't had a chance to get the hybrid system all the way to the top charge. How far can you go on just electric mode? And by the way, now that I'm going down a hill right now, I am in electric only mode. The engine's off, the tachometer's at 0. And if I'm using the adaptive cruise control too, but if I get on the brakes slightly, no one's behind me, that charge meter starts building up charge and I can feel it slowing down. And then as I ease into it, I'm going to put the throttle in about 25%. Let's accelerate. And there we go. The gas engine comes on. And now we can pass. You know, that's overall smooth. Again, not as smooth as the way Toyota does it. Funny that. I mean, imagine that. Toyota doing something smooth and nice. Go figure. And not that I'm biased or anything. So anyway, I want to give you an update on Hertz rental car. I had some interesting rental car experiences on this journey, and I'm out of time here on the radio show, but we're going to continue the discussion on the podcast. If you listen to this radio show every week, make sure that you jump over to the podcast afterwards, subscribe to it on YouTube as well as Spotify. Give it a rating on Spotify. We're going to do a bonus episode where I talk about what I saw with Hertz and my thoughts so far. And my Hertz journey is not quite over yet, so we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the Automotive ADHD show right here. I'll talk to you next week.